Well, the first thing I'd say about this Pohakuloa programmatic agreement, it's a 100 and some page document, but the conclusion on the last page I find insulting and really outrageous. It says this, quote, "Based on currently available information, no traditional cultural properties or properties of religious and cultural significance to Native Hawaiian organizations have been identified at Pohakuloa training area." Now, that's because people don't have access. The place has been blocked for 75 years. And we have to fight tooth and nails just to get public into these kind of meetings here. We should have meetings all over the islands on a wide range of issues. Cultural and religious sites, contamination sites, the lease, jurisdiction. We could go on and on. Anyway, I'll just try to highlight a few points in my 9-page submission of questions. The first point I'd make is that the U.S. military spends $1.25 trillion per year on war. That breaks down to $32 million per minute. Now, we could use a minute or even a few seconds of that war budget to do cultural and historical surveys. For example, at Pohakuloa, less than 1/3 of the 133,000-acre base has been surveyed for cultural and religious properties. And they've had that for 75 years. They say no money to do it. Another issue is there's been an ethnographic survey identified all of PTA as a traditional cultural property. And yet the military has not finalized and accepted that report. Because if they did, that would shut down the entire operation if the entire area is considered a traditional cultural property. King Uni built his great temple, peace temple, and people brought Pohaku from all districts on the island to build their ahu in that area. So it's a very sacred area. To understand how routine training at Pohakuloa impacts cultural and historic sites, we have to know what that routine training is. And that means we need a list of the weapon systems, all that bomb up there. That base has been bombed for 75 years. And we want to know today what's the current figure. The last available public figure we had was in 2004. The military acknowledged 14.8 million live rounds fired annually at Pohakuloa. What's the figure today? And let's get specific on this. Do strategic nuclear bombers still fly from Louisiana, Missouri, and Guam to bomb at Pohakuloa? Reports that came out a couple of years ago in the press said that those bombers flew once a month from Louisiana, Missouri, and Guam to bomb Pohakuloa. Called B-2 bombers, I think, because they cost $2 billion each. They're strategic nuclear bombers. I assume they're not dropping nuclear bombs up there. What are they dropping? Even if it's inert bombs, we have to know what they're doing. Is it training for nuclear war? The A-10 Warthog plane practices up there at Pohakuloa. That's a notorious plane for its 30mm cannon firing depleted uranium rounds. We have to know what are all the different weapon systems that train at Pohakuloa. Another point is, why hasn't Pohakuloa complied with the County Council Resolution 639-08 that was passed in July of 2008 by a vote of 8-1 that called for 8 actions. The first action was Hilo: stop all live fire until there's a complete assessment and cleanup of the depleted uranium present. The military has refused to comply with all 8 of those action plans. Why? Another resolution was passed 1 month later in August 2008, naming Dr. Lauren Pang as the official county representative to deal with the military on this depleted uranium and contamination issue. The military has refused to consult with Dr. Pang. Why? In September of 2018, myself and 2 other members from Malawian met with Commander Borce up at Pohakuloa. And we raised a range of things, but there were 4 specific action plans. One was don't invite school children up to Pohakuloa. until there's a complete assessment and comprehensive testing and monitoring of the depleted uranium contamination. And yet this past Earth Day, or they called it this year Experience Pohakuloa Day, they had hundreds of school children, again up there, using them in what our judgment would be unethical human experimentation. We asked also for a memorandum of understanding for access to cultural and religious sites, especially for the Makahiki season, opening and closing ceremonies from roughly November through March. Several other points were asked. None of them have been granted. We said, as a show of good faith, have public community meetings, not just what's required by law like this meeting today on the 106 of programmatic agreement, but there's concerns on a wide range of issues. There should be meetings all over this island on culture, religious sites, on contamination, on the extension of the lease, which they're going to have to go through, a wide range of things. If they really want to be transparent, come out into the community, where the community controls the forums, not like these meetings where the military controls it. On June 30th of 2018, Commander Borce came out to the protest, and he said he believes in being transparent with the community and doing things Ohana style, because he's a local guy from Kalihi on the island of Oahu. But what I've seen happen now in his nearly 1 year here, he's very astute at trying to divide the community into those who have consultation status, those who don't, and playing one group off against another. There's a whole range of questions that could be asked just on military regulations. One of our advisors is retired Army Major Doug Rocky, who wrote the Army regulation on depleted uranium, which is 700-48 on depleted uranium. And he is saying that there's a whole range of concerns that should be addressed that the military is not doing on depleted uranium. There's a serious question of how much depleted uranium is up there. The military likes to lowball the figure, as only 700 spotting rounds have been used. But even their own Army Colonel, Colonel Howard Killian, testified before the County Council that based on the number of people who were trained to fire the Davy Crockett nuclear weapons system, there would have been upwards of 2,000 spotting rounds fired there. And now other people have raised the point that it's not only the spotting rounds, which contain 6 to 8 ounces of depleted uranium, that they fired dummy rounds, and that would possibly contain 35 pounds or more of depleted uranium. So instead of possibly a half a ton to a ton of depleted uranium due to the spotting rounds, it could be upwards of tens of tons up there. So, and that's just for one system. We don't know if there have been anti-tank weapons used up there, or there have been depleted uranium anti-tank weapons. Or what about these A-10 30mm cannon fired by the A-10 Warthog? They fired depleted uranium. There's an issue of major military expansion. These are covert operations that are expanding all over Hawaii, outside of military bases, in our county parks, on our shorelines and nearshore waters. One of these plans got exposed. We had a right to comment on it. It involved Mauna Kea Park, and I'll describe what it was so you get a sense of this. But they're doing these on all the islands now, all over the state. In fact, they've drawn a big rectangle around the island of Oahu, which already is 25% military control for bases. Now the entire island and its nearshore waters are being used for special ops. And here was the one that was disclosed from Mauna Kea Park. At night, up to 50 troops from Pohakuloa would march out of Pohakuloa, cross the highway, go up on the slopes of Mauna Kea, and set up camouflage surveillance over Mauna Kea Park. During the daytime, there would be military armed plainclothes enemy combatants mingling with the park participants. And the job of the surveillance people was trying to identify who was the enemy combatant among the park participants. And of course, if it's a real-life situation, they may be ordered to assassinate that person. Now those enemy combatants were going to be armed. They were going to have blank munitions, but they were going to have real weapons. Now, can you imagine the scenario of a father pushing his child on a swing at Mauna Kea Park, and all of a sudden he sees somebody with a gun? It could be a very dangerous situation, very explosive. It could be lethal to children, to families, whoever. It was bizarre. We made a big stink about this. There were no hearings or anything about using our parks for special operations like this. We got it canceled, but I was appalled that the Department of Land and Natural Resources, that are in charge of the shorelines and inshore waters, all the officials I talked to had no idea about these special operations being planned on every island throughout the state. And there's never been a public hearing on these special ops. We've been addressing depleted uranium, which according to Dr. Pang, when that metal is hit with high explosive, it burns, turns into depleted uranium oxide particles, micron size, and if you inhale them, it's the most deadly form of radiation, and stays in the body for decades, and can cause cancer in various organs of the body, and actually cause genetic damage passed on for future generations. So it's a very serious issue, this depleted uranium. But there's also the question from several sources, and one who identified himself as a former military intelligence officer, that besides firing Davy Crockett dummy rounds, spotting rounds containing DU, dummy rounds containing DU, that actually there were several Davy Crockett nuclear weapons exploded at Pohakuloa in the late 50s, early 1960s. Now these Davy Crockett's, they were small nuclear weapons, much smaller than the Hiroshima bomb, but still a very large explosion, ranging from 10 to 20 tons of dynamite equivalent up to a kiloton, 1,000 tons of dynamite equivalent. But back in those days, in the 50s and early 60s, the Saddle Road was basically a gravel road, wasn't traveled much. It would have sounded like a big explosion, but I don't think people would know the difference between a conventional bomb and a small nuclear bomb in those days. But if those nuclear weapons were exploded there, there would be signature radiolytic products like cesium, what is it, 137, that would still be there because they have a half-life of 30 years, and 2 half-lives is still very distinguishable. So any comprehensive testing and monitoring for depleted uranium should also include the testing for radiolytic products, fissionable products, including cesium-137. So let me just comment one thing on the water at Pohakuloa, because this is an important issue. That nearly 6 years ago, it'll be 6 years ago next month in June, that they hit water reservoir at 700 feet below the surface at Pohakuloa. They're looking for water because Pohakuloa spends $2 million a year trucking water up there. So they hit this water source, but here we are nearly 6 years later, and nothing has been released on what's in that water, what contaminants. Is depleted uranium in that water? How about such things as the lead, the amount of lead they've used in 75 years of live fire training? Another substance used in rockets and munitions, perchlorate, which is contaminating hundreds of sites on the continent around military bases where rockets and munitions are fired. And another thing called PFAS. That's a severe toxin, cancer-causing material that's used in foam and firefighting equipment. Pohakuloa is always causing fires with their live fire munitions. So I would assume there's a lot of that contamination up there.
How old are you, Jim?
72.
72, and you got to wait 20 minutes in the hot sun. They invited you to this meeting. What is this person's name in the camouflage? Luis Ortiz.
Oh,
he's not consulting, but he's sitting in the air conditioning. Maybe I'll start with the elephant in the room. We come to these things year after year. There are mandates saying, clean it up. You say, well, we're military, we don't have to do what you tell us. We say, stop the bombing. You say, we're the military, we don't have to do what you tell us. Then you have us sit in these rooms like you're listening and disregard everything we say. Okay, we live here. Your own soldiers are having babies with birth defects because of the depleted uranium oxides. We are suffering. The Mauna itself is turning brown and desolate because the water is being diverted into Pohakuloa and so many other things. Okay. So coming to these meetings to me is an exercise in futility on the people on this side of your table. So I've decided that if I do come to these meetings, it's only to express that we know that you're not legitimate. And especially here in this Hawai'i Island, this is a separate country from the United States. And you have no authority here to tell Jim and the people that live here what we can and can't do and when we can and can't do it. You need to basically stop mutilating and annihilating people and the land and sea life and the air and the environment. And you won't stop. Okay, so the only thing really to do is to put you all on notice to stop committing crimes against humanity and all life forms. To stop pretending like you don't know the answers or give us falsified answers. This is what you do every meeting that we have of this nature. Okay, and we just want to pursue the things that you say we have a right to on the date of our birth. Life, liberty, pursuit of happiness. None of us can even achieve the first one because we're all dying from the pollution, from the DU oxides, from everything you're doing up there. The whole world knows that the United States is the global invader and oppressor. And you came here and you did it to us 200 years ago and have not stopped. Whatever you tell us has been proven to be a lie. And tonight is no exception. So you're all just simply put on notice that if you continue working for this United States military who has no authority again and no legitimacy, period, and especially here. And if you continue to disregard the people and your responsibility as human beings to stop destroying other human beings and all life forms. Okay, you not only have to answer to the one we all have to answer to, but you will be held liable here for all the crimes you continue to commit. We don't even care how you pretty it up. We don't even care at this point what you say in your own defense. We just ask you to stop. Consider your career, and consider a career that doesn't involve destruction and desolation, and then covering it up with words that mean nothing. We ask you to consider this, and according to your conscience, make a decision. Because when you're put on notice, which I'm doing right now, it means you will be held accountable and liable for all your actions. You can't blame your commanders, and you can't pin it on those below you. Each of you needs to make a decision, and each of you will be held accountable if you continue on this path.
Pohakuloa is sacred to us because our kupuna, many Hawaiians today are direct descendants of Umialilua, who declared the Aina Mauna Kapu, which includes Pohakuloa. And ahu that he erected during his reign of this island remain today and indicate to us that that area is kapu. And when our kupuna said an area was kapu, it was not just a superstition. It meant that that land and the resources there were absolutely necessary to sustain life on this island. We know that the Vai Kapua Kane that comes from Waiau, where Pohakuloa and Pohakua Kane were known kiai, guardians of the sacred water of Kane from Waiau at the Pico of Mauna Kea, flowed down to the area today that is called Pohakuloa, and that there are two very large aquifers right below the surface of PTA that sustain most of this island. That water is held in large aquifers today. We call them papakuvai. In ancient times, they were the hopokapu, the large caverns that hold the vaya kane that sustains life on this island. We fear that those waters are being contaminated, which threatens every single one of us who live on this land. And I don't believe Mr. Fleming's statements that tests done 6 years ago have not been completed to show the toxins that are in that water. And today, Western science is only now confirming what we have always known. And yet he can tell us the isotopes from Waiau are exactly the same as Pohakuloa, but he can't tell us what you say that we don't yet know the toxins that could be in that water from all of the exercises, depleted uranium, all of the toxins that are used during military exercises. I don't believe it. Perhaps that information is being withheld in order for a lease to be renewed. And the last thing I want to say is, we know that Pono will return to this land. In our lifetime, we will see it with our eyes. The military will leave. They will clean up their mess. You may not think that's possible. We know it is true because our kupuna have stated it, they have foretold it, and we will see it in our time. Mahalo.
Here's the legal questions that require expertise. The entire Hawaiian archipelago is the nation state of the Hawaiian Kingdom. The Hawaiian Kingdom is recognized as a neutral nation. Your presence in the territory of Hawaii has no lawful authority from the Hawaiian Kingdom. It also violates international laws regarding the movement of troops and supplies through neutral territory. It also involves laws of the territorial seas. When you start considering that you're making a military corridor from California to Hawaii, which encompasses a lot of what it really looks like is that you're trying to move the western borders of the United States to the Northwest Hawaiian Islands. The taking of international waters, which is why it's something, I bring this to your attention because these are things that really can be answered by you. I mean, can't be answered by you, but you can direct the questions to the proper authorities, which is what you promised to do last year. And of course that didn't happen. So the United States has no lawful authority to assert its jurisdiction within the Hawaiian Kingdom. The only treaties that exist is that of reciprocal treaty of friendship, commerce, and navigation, reciprocity treaty. This has been presented to you before a response is required. I don't know why I'm not being contacted, but that is the problem. A lot of these questions that are coming up here could have been answered.
My question is, why are you bringing children to PTA when there's depleted uranium dust in the air? And to top it off, you call it Earth Day. Bombing our island is not taking care of the Earth. That's what I want to know. I'm upset about that.
Okay, thank you for your question on the depleted uranium and depleted uranium oxide dust that you're referring to. So several of those documents regarding air monitoring is what you're referring to with the dust. And all of them end up with the same conclusion that the results of the foreign boring analysis suggest that the presence of depleted uranium residue and range impacts areas at PTA on the island of Hawaii does not currently pose any inhalation hazard to the citizens residing outside the boundaries of the installation.
I don't believe that.
That's okay.
No one does.
I'm not asking you. Robert Cherry is our person through the Army, is our expert on the depleted uranium
And
information.
who's paying him off? That's what I want to know.
Good question.
He's a federal employee.
Yeah, right.
Dr. Pang isn't in
Dr.
conflict.
Pang was, of course, in the military as well.
You know, I wish all of you folks a lot of aloha. We're all human, and you know, this is a difficult time in our story. But the military is about his story only. And right now, as we speak in Yemen, you're training people to force a woman to choose which of her 2 children are going to survive, which of those 2 children are going to starve to death before her eyes. The training that you are all participating in is called reckless destruction of humanity. These are war crimes all around the globe. And you want us to stomach this island being a training ground
Right,
for that?
right.
Not on our watch.
No,
Ever.
right.
The children are suffering. And then you bring them in busloads onto the base. Like I said, I have a lot of compassion for you and a lot of aloha. But it is so time to go. Long time ago.
Right, right.
And you must be more and more clear on that. It's not just the illegal occupation. It's
Right,
not just
right.
the insanity of what's going on. It's everything, and it's all interrelated. And
Right.
yes, you do have Kuleana here. And you, my friend, born on this Aina.
Right.
I have huge compassion for you. You need to help redirect this thing. You
Right.
all have Kuleana if you want to be on this Aina.
Right.
And the Aina, you're not listening at all to the Aina. You bring people to do studies for you, for your agenda. But you don't listen to all the other studies that have already been done
Right.
that are not paid for by the U.S. military.
Right.
Objective science, right in front of your face, and you say, no, we had that done years ago, and we've got that under control. You don't have anything under control.
Right.
And you know what? The people are the power,
Yes.
not the military.
Yes.
And we are saying, year after year, it is time to go. And before you go, you clean up.
Clean up.
Just like any mother would say to the boys, okay boys, playtime is over. Malama Aina now.
Right, right.
Mahalo for what you do when it's pono.
Yeah.
If it's not pono, which none of this is, none of it. Especially bringing children on base.
Right.
I mean, there's many especiallys, but that is just so heavy.
A couple of times now you've said there's not enough money, or the money hasn't been allocated, or you're waiting for money. That's a good excuse for you to turn around and say we can't do our job because our superiors won't fund it. Obviously they won't. What reason do we have to have confidence that in the future they won't fund a cleanup?
Right.
They won't even fund you doing what you're doing now. So it's time for you to say, you're not funding us, we got to stop. Now, when the lease is up, the people in this room are going to say, no more lease. I'm saying no lease.
Right.
In terms of funding, we do get funding. I said we're underfunded.
We're not going to prove harm. In unethical experimentation, you do not have to prove harm. I am sick and tired of the rhetoric of saying there's no harm. You always give us the physical model of depleted uranium. We're not concerned about that. We agree with the NRC. We agree with your website, the Garrison. We agree with the State of Hawaii Public Health Department, which is so close to your website, it's close to plagiarism. You got the State of Hawaii Public Health Department in your pocket. That's why there aren't statistics being done on birth defects. When I studied 2005, the Hawaii birth defects program was 1 in 17.
Wow.
Has a visible birth defect. Autism is epidemic here. Something's poisoning us. You've got to look at the environment. The problem and why my PTSD is activated this moment is because I have read you guys, I have studied you guys, and you're just not credible. You're not having any honesty, integrity, accountability for the pollution you create. $400 million was spent on Koho'olawe, and you never even touched all of the unexploded ordnance that missed the island because it was practice. You cracked the water table on that island. Now, the water table up there, I know plenty of kapunas that know the mountain, pig hunters that know the mountain and know the areas that you can walk and you can hear the rushing water. I have worked with Dr. Pang off and on since 2007. I believe him.
Yeah.
Bob Cherry I listened to on the radio last year with Colonel Marcus. They're lying. We know you got these agencies in your pocket.
Right.
To say, all clear, you got mainstream media in your pocket doing the commercials. Come visit Pohakuloa. This must end. Be accountable for what you're doing. Restore. If you cannot afford to clean it up, stop doing it.
Right.
Stop destroying this planet. And my job is to help educate and stand by the Kanaka as they self-determine whatever form that takes.
Right.
I stand with the Kanaka.
Right.
I stand with the Kanaka.